How did the Inuit go from shivering in the Arctic to mastering fire? With no easy way to light a flame, they had it even harder than other early civilizations in milder climates. But before fire was even a thought, how did they survive those freezing nights? Just imagine waking up when it's negative 40 degrees outside. Your breath freezes so fast, it sounds like you're crunching potato chips just by breathing. No heater, no stove, no warm cup of anything to hold between your hands. This was daily life in the ancient Arctic. The Inuit survived through incredible adaptation. Their clothing wasn't just winter wear, it was engineering at its finest. Multiple layers of caribou fur, worn with the hollow hairs facing both inward and outward, created nature's perfect insulation. One caribou hide contains about 350,000 hollow hairs per square inch. If modern coat companies had this technology, they'd charge you the price of a small car and call it revolutionary thermal management. This natural technology trapped body heat so effectively that an Inuit person could stand nearly naked on ice and not feel cold, at least for a little while. Food wasn't cooked, but eaten raw. Fresh seal meat, still warm from the animal's body heat, provided precious calories. Nothing says dinner is served quite like slicing into a seal and eating it before it has time to freeze solid. Fish was often consumed frozen, shaved into thin slices that would melt in the mouth. Whale blubber, rich in fat and calories, was a prized food that helped keep bodies warm from the inside. The original frozen dinner didn't come with microwave instructions, just thaw in mouth and enjoy. Water came from ice, melted in the mouth or stored close to the body. During winter hunts, Inuit would sometimes build snow houses, igloo-it, that captured body heat and could raise the inside temperature up to 50 degrees warmer than outside, all without a single flame. These snow homes were the original climate control, except the thermostat was permanently stuck on barely not freezing. While other cultures around the world had discovered fire as far back as 1 million years ago, the Arctic presented unique challenges. Fire needs fuel, and the treeless tundra offered little to burn. Driftwood was rare and precious, used for tools rather than burning. Trees in the Arctic are like politicians with straight answers. They simply don't exist. The Arctic's harsh climate meant that any fire-starting technique used elsewhere would need significant adaptation. Friction methods that worked well in warmer, drier climates failed in the cold, damp air. Striking sparks was possible, but what would you catch them with? Trying to start a fire in the Arctic is like trying to get a tan at midnight. Technically possible, but highly improbable. Life without fire meant living within strict limits. Travel had to account for body heat preservation. Hunting techniques focused on maximizing caloric return with minimal energy expenditure. Social structures centered around sharing resources to ensure group survival. The buddy system wasn't just for swimming, it was for not becoming a human popsicle. The Arctic before fire wasn't just cold and dark, it was a place where human ingenuity was pushed to its absolute limits. The Inuit didn't just survive, they created an entire way of life perfectly tuned to one of Earth's most extreme environments. But change was coming. Someone, somewhere was about to glimpse something that would transform Arctic life forever. Lightning strikes happen even in the Arctic, though much less often than in warmer places. The average number of lightning strikes in the Arctic is fewer than 1 per square kilometer per year, compared to over 70 strikes in tropical regions. When lightning does strike, it can ignite dry grasses, mosses, or the occasional patch of stunted shrubs. The Arctic gets so few lightning strikes that when one happens, even the clouds seem surprised. Volcanic activity offered another potential source. Iceland and parts of Alaska experience volcanic eruptions that send fiery displays across the landscape. Ancient Inuit traveling near these areas might have witnessed molten lava flowing down mountainsides or setting nearby vegetation ablaze. Volcanoes are basically the earth having a temper tantrum, complete with throwing hot stuff around. You think you're cold? Here, hold this lava. Perhaps the most likely introduction came from the sea itself. Ocean currents carried driftwood from southern forests to Arctic shores. Lightning-struck trees or those caught in forest fires might have continued burning even as waves pushed them northward. Talk about fast food delivery. The ocean bringing pre-cooked meals right to your doorstep. 5-star service from Mother Nature herself. The first Inuit who spotted such a sight, a glowing piece of driftwood washing ashore, still smoldering or even actively burning. The initial reaction must have been a mixture of fear and fascination. Fire moves. It dances. It seems alive in ways other things in nature don't. What's this orange dancing thing? It's warm, it's bright, and it's definitely not a very small, confused sun. Fire behaves unlike anything else in the natural world. It grows when fed. It breathes air. It produces offspring in the form of new flames. It dies when starved or drowned. Those first observers might have seen fire as a living creature, mysterious, dangerous, but potentially useful. Fire, the pet that can keep you warm, but might also eat your house if you don't train it properly. The crucial moment came when someone decided to approach this strange phenomenon. Bold or desperate, that first person who dared to touch fire changed history. They likely used a stick to poke at the flames, discovering that fire could be transferred from one object to another. That first brave soul deserves a medal, or at least some burn ointment and a high five for their hot discovery. Fire is both generous and greedy. It gives warmth and light freely, but demands constant feeding. The initial attempts to maintain fire probably failed many times. A flame left unattended dies. A flame given too much fuel at once can grow dangerously large. A flame caught in wind or rain can disappear in seconds. Fire is like that friend who shows up at your house, eats all your food, but tells such good stories, you keep inviting them back anyway. The moment of first contact between humans and fire must have been extraordinary. A brave soul steps toward the strange dancing light. The heat hits their face from several steps away, a sensation completely new to someone who had only ever felt the heat of sun, bodies, and fresh kills. It was like discovering a tiny sun had fallen to earth and decided to stay for dinner. Did they shout to others, run away, throw snow at it? Each reaction tells us something about human nature when faced with the unknown. The first attempt to touch fire directly surely resulted in a burned finger and a valuable lesson. Fire gives, but it also takes. The dancing flames cast shadows that moved unlike anything they'd seen before. These new shapes on snow and ice walls might have seemed magical or spiritual. The crackling sounds of burning wood, completely foreign to their ears, added to the otherworldly experience. Fire was putting on a full light and sound show when all the Arctic had previously offered was a quiet darkness. That first encounter offered immediate revelations. Fire provided light when the sun was absent. It gave warmth that didn't come from furs or body heat. It could transform materials, making them softer, drier, or turn to ash. And most importantly, it could spread from one object to another if carefully handled. The extraordinary power of this discovery can't be overstated. In a world where survival depended entirely on what nature provided, fire represented something different, a force that could be influenced, directed, and potentially controlled. It was like being handed the instruction manual to the Arctic after struggling with the controls for thousands of years. With fire now a precious resource to be protected, the Inuit faced a new challenge. The ancient Inuit faced this puzzle with typical resourcefulness. Watching the fire closely, they noticed it sometimes came from stone. When rocks fell or scraped against each other, small flashes occasionally appeared. These tiny bright moments held the key. Certain stones, when struck together, create sparks. Pyrite, also called fool's gold because of its shiny gold-like appearance, produces sparks when struck against harder stones. Quartz works too. The mineral content of these rocks creates friction that breaks off tiny, superheated fragments. Rocks making fire are basically just stones having an argument so heated they start throwing sparks at each other. The first deliberate spark making was likely an accident. Someone sharpening a stone tool might have noticed flashes when certain rocks struck each other. Each spark lasted only a fraction of a second, reaching temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to start a fire if it landed on the right material. But a spark alone isn't fire. The gap between seeing sparks and creating flames was enormous. The spark needed something to catch on, to grow. This something, called tinder, had to be extremely dry, fluffy, and easy to ignite. In forests, materials like dry grass, certain fungi, or shredded bark work well. In the Arctic, these were scarce. The Inuit found creative solutions. Arctic cotton grass, when dried and fluffed, could catch a spark. So could the downy feathers from birds or the fine hair from Arctic foxes and rabbits. The fluff from certain Arctic plants worked too, though gathering enough took time and patience. Making your first fire starter kit in the Arctic was like trying to gather enough dandelion fluff to stuff a pillow, one tiny piece at a time. Once a spark caught in the tinder, the real challenge began. Blowing too hard would extinguish the tiny ember. Not blowing enough would starve it of oxygen. The careful breath needed to nurture this baby flame required practice, and probably plenty of frustrating failures. The first successful fire starter likely had eyebrows singed off from hundreds of failed attempts. Talk about dedication to your craft. The process demanded precise actions performed in sequence. First came gathering the right stones and testing them for spark-making ability. Finding the perfect fire-making rocks in the Arctic was like trying to find matching socks in the dark. Technically possible, but frustratingly difficult. Next, collecting and preparing tinder, keeping it bone dry became crucial. Then the firemaker would strike the stones to create sparks aimed directly at the tinder. This required the aim of an archer and the patience of someone waiting for summer in the Arctic. When a spark finally caught, gentle blowing fed it oxygen. Too much breath and you'd blow out your hard-earned spark. Too little and it would die anyway, like trying to keep a cranky toddler happy. Last came the gradual addition of increasingly larger fuel as the flame grew stronger. Success rates were dismally low. Even experienced firemakers today, using traditional methods, often need dozens of attempts to create a flame. For the first Inuit trying this, the failure rate may have been 95% or higher. Each attempt might have taken 20 or 30 minutes of concentrated effort. Winter made everything harder. Cold fingers lost dexterity. Breath condensed into visible clouds, adding moisture to tinder that needed to stay dry. Wind scattered carefully arranged materials or snuffed out newborn flames. Making fire in winter was like trying to solve a puzzle while wearing oven mitts in a walk-in freezer with someone occasionally blowing on your puzzle pieces. Successful firemaking in minus 30-degree weather was a true achievement, representing both skill and stubborn persistence. The breakthrough moment, when spark became flame, became sustainable fire, must have been cause for celebration. That precious, hard-won fire would be protected for as long as possible. Rather than repeat the difficult process each time, keeping an existing fire alive became the priority. The knowledge spread slowly across generations, passed from those who mastered the technique to others who carried it forward. The skill of making fire became as essential as hunting or sewing clothes, a fundamental technology that changed life forever. With fire-making skills mastered, the Inuit faced a new practical problem. In the Arctic's harsh conditions, a continuous flame represented security and survival. A well-maintained fire could provide warmth, light, and cooking capabilities for an entire group. The difference between life and death sometimes hinged on whether fire remained available during the coldest, darkest months of winter. Firekeeping required specialized knowledge and constant attention. The flame needed regular feeding with the right amount of fuel. Too much at once could smother it, too little would cause it to fade away. The time between adding new materials had to be carefully judged. Babysitting a fire was like watching a toddler. Turn your back for 2 minutes, and suddenly you've got a serious problem on your hands. Transporting fire presented unique challenges. When groups needed to move, following animal migrations, or seeking better hunting grounds, the precious flame had to travel with them. Various methods evolved to meet this need. One approach involved carrying smoldering embers wrapped in certain materials that burned extremely slowly. Dried fungi, particularly a type called tinder fungus, could hold an ember for days when properly prepared. These natural fire carriers allowed flames to be transported over long distances without going out. Another method involved using an oil lamp or quollic made from soapstone. These flat bowl-shaped vessels held animal oil, primarily from seals or whales, that burned consistently with minimal smoke when a properly prepared wick was used. A single quollic could maintain fire for many hours with minimal tending. These lamps were the original low-maintenance pets. Feed them a little oil, and they'll keep you warm all night without complaining. The job of firekeeper likely went to those who showed particular skill at maintaining flames. Youth might be trained in this vital task, learning from experienced elders. The keepers developed an almost instinctive sense of when fuel needed adding or when a flame was in danger of dying out. They recognized different types of smoke and what each meant about the fire's health. A blue-white smoke meant a clean, hot burn. Thick yellow smoke signaled damp or poor quality fuel. Fire-keeping spaces developed in Inuit dwellings. In permanent settlements, a central fire pit might serve as the community's main source of flame. In temporary camps or hunting expeditions, smaller portable fire solutions were necessary. Inside snow houses, raised platforms kept flames away from melting walls while allowing heat to circulate. The design of these fire-keeping spaces showed remarkable ingenuity in balancing heat needs with practical concerns like smoke ventilation and preventing structural damage. The cultural importance of firekeeping can't be overstated. Those who maintained the flames held positions of trust and responsibility. Their work directly impacted everyone's comfort and survival. Firekeepers might have been respected similar to skilled hunters or healers, people whose specialized knowledge benefited the entire group. Through trial and error, the Inuit discovered which materials made the best long-burning fuels. Whale and walrus bones, slow burning due to their oil content, could maintain coals for hours. Certain types of moss, when dried properly, burned steadily. Animal fats, particularly from sea mammals, produced reliable flames with minimal smoke. The Arctic fuel selection process makes modern gasoline choices seem simple: regular or premium. Try choosing between 27 types of partially dried moss instead. Techniques for preserving embers overnight evolved. Before sleeping, firekeepers would bank the flames by covering hot coals with ash, creating an insulating layer that kept heat trapped but allowed enough oxygen to prevent the fire from dying completely. Come morning, they could uncover the still glowing embers and quickly rebuild the flame without starting from scratch. As fire became integral to daily life, the next transformation was already beginning. Cooking was perhaps the most significant change. Raw meat gave way to cooked food, which was easier to chew and digest. Heat broke down tough muscle fibers and killed harmful bacteria. The world's first cooking show began. Welcome to Arctic Kitchen, where today we'll be making seal. Not frozen, not raw, but actually hot. Cooking also unlocked new flavors and textures. Foods that were once tough became tender. Inedible parts became useful. Even the simplest meals improved dramatically when touched by flame. Cooking with fire also meant food could be preserved longer. Smoke from certain woods helped keep meat from spoiling. Dried fish and meat lasted much longer than raw food, creating food security during lean times. Storage of food became more flexible, and the constant pressure to eat fresh kills immediately eased somewhat. The first Inuit food critic was born. This smoked seal has excellent char marks, though perhaps a bit overdone on the blubber section. Fire provided warmth that extended activity hours. No longer forced to huddle for body heat during the coldest periods, people could work, craft, and socialize longer. Arctic nightclubs finally had proper lighting and heating. Attendance soared. During the darkest winter months, when the sun disappeared entirely for weeks, fire brought psychological comfort along with physical warmth. The glow of flames created a center for community gatherings, storytelling, and cultural activities. The light from fire transformed darkness into opportunity. Where once activity stopped when daylight faded, now work and social life could continue into the evening. This effectively extended the productive day, particularly important during winter when daylight hours were extremely limited. Simple tasks like mending clothes or making tools became possible at any hour. The first Arctic all-nighter wasn't studying for exams, it was hunting gear repair by firelight. Tool making advanced dramatically. Heat could be used to soften materials like bone and antler, making them easier to shape. The first Inuit blacksmith probably burned every finger at least twice, occupational hazard of the world's hottest new career. Heated stone became more workable. Specialized tools emerged that weren't possible before. Fire-hardened points made hunting weapons more effective. Heated bone could be bent into new shapes for fish hooks and needles. Fire allowed for new materials to be used. Animal sinew could be dried faster and more effectively, creating stronger binding material. Animal glues could be melted and applied. Wood, when available, could be shaped and dried. Wood carving in the Arctic before fire was like trying to sculpt ice cream on a hot day. Technically possible, but frustratingly messy. As fire became firmly integrated into daily life, its influence extended beyond practical uses. The flame that began as a rare natural wonder was about to take on deeper cultural and spiritual meaning. Perhaps the most refined fire technology developed by the Inuit was the kolik, a specialized oil lamp carved from soapstone. This elegant solution to Arctic lighting and heating burned seal or whale oil using wicks made from Arctic cotton grass or moss. The kolik burned with a surprisingly bright, clean flame that produced minimal smoke, crucial in the closed confines of winter dwellings. A well-maintained kolik could burn continuously for days with minimal tending, providing both light and heat. The kolik was basically the world's first energy-efficient appliance. No batteries required, just add blubber. Fire became deeply woven into Inuit spiritual beliefs. Many traditional stories feature fire as a central element. Tales of how it was discovered, stolen from animals, or given as a gift from spiritual beings. Fire often represented life itself in these narratives, showing how thoroughly it had transformed their understanding of the world. The practical impacts of fire extended beyond daily comfort. Archaeological evidence shows that with fire came greater longevity. Before fire, few Inuit lived beyond 40 years. After its mastery, many lived into their 60s or beyond. Fire made food safer, allowed better tool creation, provided protection from cold, and enabled survival in previously uninhabitable regions. Even today, the kolik holds cultural significance beyond its practical use. During important ceremonies and gatherings, lighting a traditional kolik acknowledges the connection between present and past. The simple flame represents both physical survival and cultural continuation, a living link to ancestors who first tamed fire in one of Earth's most challenging environments. From a world of ice to masters of flame, the Inuit story of fire shows how one discovery changed everything. This technological leap didn't just add a tool to their survival kit, it fundamentally transformed how people lived, worked, ate, and related to one another in one of Earth's most challenging environments.